My class, National University, David Goyette, continuing the lecture on the Diagnostic A U.S. History preparation for the CSET Social Science. I was cut off right after, right before going to the question on the Quakers. So I'll go over how that's worded. 3,000 of these early American settlers were imprisoned under Charles II. Known as the Society of Friends, they took the Thou Shalt Not Kill commandment very seriously and began a pacifist religion that called for no ministry or clergy to lead them. They are more commonly known by this name. And I give you Methodist, Lutherans, the Five Percenters, just to throw in a quirky one there. And the last, of course, the correct answer is Quakers. The Society of Friends asked the worshiper to sit quietly in silent meditation until an inward light indicated a direct spiritual communication with God. In this meditation, the believer would often begin to tremble or quake, thus giving the left-wing Protestant sect its name, Quakers. The original 13 colonies are Virginia, Jamestown, Massachusetts, New York, Maryland, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Delaware, New Hampshire, and ... And you have to fill in the blanks there. North Carolina, South Carolina, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. The economies of Virginia and Maryland relied heavily on the cultivation of which crop? Tobacco. Remember John Rolfe and good old Pocahontas. John Rolfe realizes after trying other crops that tobacco is the way to go, and stinkweed, as it's called by the king at the time in Britain, and looked down upon for a while, becomes very popular and becomes the leading export for a while there. Really, if you think about our history with tobacco, as people have mixed feelings about it, and as a very negative thing for our lungs and our health. There are some historians that point out that in some ways it financed the successful settlements in the South. And if it weren't for tobacco, the early settlements would have never got off the ground. Not all historians take that advanced position on it, though. The settlement of Jamestown Colony in Virginia survived as a result of the planting of tobacco as a cash crop. Though the leadership of John Smith in the planting of tobacco as a cash crop, the Jamestown Colony was able to escape the fate of the earlier Roanoke Colony, which disappeared. Okay, moving on. The Stamp Act placed a tax on printed matter of all kinds in the colonies. So it was far-reaching, and it really irritated the colonists. Whose forces captured Kaskaskia, Cahoyqua, and Vincennes? That would be George Rogers Clark, conqueror of the Old West. The first national plan of government for the United States was the Articles of Confederation. Let me go back to that last question where I mispronounced or had trouble pronouncing the tribes there. Let me do some spelling for you. Kaskaskiia, Kahokia, if you want to look these up, and Vincennes. Of course, you may remember the name Vincennes from the naval ship that was involved in the shooting down of the Iranian airliner. And not the same in this case, but same namesake. Okay. The first national plan of government for the United States was Articles of Confederation. The Great Compromise reached at the Constitutional Convention focused on representation in Congress. The principle of judicial review was established by Chief Justice John Marshall. And, that's the case where you had Adams and Jefferson dueling over the court seats and appointees, and of course the famous case with John Marshall making the decision. Let me get back to you on that. I'm having a little brain episode here. Let's see, 505. United States officials were angered by the practice of impressment by the British. Of course, impressment taking over the ships and forcing the sailors from other vessels to become servants or crew on their own ships, so basically forcing them to work. Which of the following was proposed in order to fund the national transportation system during the era of good feelings after the War of 1812? This was called the American system. The man of the people elected in 1828 was good old Andrew Jackson. The succession of Maryland would have meant losing the United States capital to the Confederacy. Which of the following best describes the significance of a major military turning point during the Civil War? And of course, this was the Battle of Vicksburg, you'll remember. General Grant's defeat of the Confederate forces at Vicksburg in July 1863 enabled the Union to establish control of the Mississippi River, separating the southwestern states, Louisiana, Texas, and Arkansas, from the eastern states of the Confederacy. This is a sample question from the CSET questions on the website. The Battle of Vicksburg consolidated Union control of the Mississippi River and divided the Confederacy in two. The Confederacy was confident that France and Great Britain would come to the South's aid because both nations' economies depended heavily on cotton. However, this was not to be. Which of the following is the best example of the doctrine of manifest destiny? Now remember, manifest destiny is the sea to shining sea, quoted by John L. O'Sullivan in a newspaper article saying that it's God's will that the United States should expand from the east to the west and take over the continent, as it were. And the acquisition of California in the Mexican-American War of the 1840s is the best example of those there. The doctrine of manifest destiny was based on a belief that the United States had a providential or God-given mission to democratize the Western Hemisphere through territorial expansion. Proponents of the doctrine thus view the acquisition of California from Mexico in the 1940s as an important step in the realization of their aims. This is also a CSET example question. One of the Union's first all-black regiments, the 54th Massachusetts Infantry, was noted for breaking the Confederates' hold on Fort Wagner. Which of the following most influenced the northward migration of African Americans during the early 20th century? The job opportunities provided by mobilization for the war for World War I. Economic improvement was the central aim of African Americans who moved northward during the early 20th century. The employment opportunities provided by mobilization of World War I thus spurred a major increase in African American migration to northern urban centers. This is also a CSET sample question. The French and Indian War pitted the French and the American Indian allies against the British and colonial militias. It's not, as our friend from Don't Know Much About History likes to put out, it's not the French against the Indians. It's the French and Indians against the British and the colonial militias. As a result of the advancements in transportation in the 1820s, regional specialization developed in the United States. The country began to experience separation as canals and railroads divided the regions geographically. Northern states were known for manufacturing and the South for agriculture, while the West was still a mixed bag. I'm going to pause here because I've got to break these up in about 9-minute, 10-minute sections. So I'll be right back with more for a CSET U.S. History review.